It's fucking almost breakfast time.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Sly Fox Sports podcast. And this is the Week 10 college football review. And we're doing it right now because it's so fresh and it's so fire that it was so amazing. Game of the year, would you say, Mr. Nix?
I haven't got much to fucking level it up against, have I? Like, you're asking the wrong person. This was the first weekend that I dedicated my time to properly watching this sport, and I hope within a few weeks you will realise just how intelligent I am because I will run Jeremy Miller off of this show. Of course it was Game of the Year. Of course it fucking was. Let me get my extensive... This gives you an idea of how thorough I get when it comes to American football. I don't know how much of this you'll see. You probably won't see it at all, actually. So basically, I've got a phone right here with a shit ton of notes, which for some reason apparently is invisible to man. But yeah, crazy. Absolutely crazy. Number one ranked Clemson goes down at the South Bend to Notre Dame in double overtime. Overtime. Yeah, killer game. Absolutely killer. A real battle of attrition. There were points in this game where I thought, the Fighting Irish aren't going to get this done. There were a lot of points in the game where they couldn't convert in the end zone. Their red zone efficiency was not very good in this game.
No.
I worried about Book, but as the game went on, he steeled himself more. I started to say, I think his dad, by the way, is a fucking ledge. Oh, big
yes.
Dave.
His dad is fucking amazing.
He could fucking be his offensive lineman. Fucking disgraceful. If he gets in the NFL.
I watched the second half. I didn't catch the first half, but if I heard correctly, Tirico said he was a musician.
No, he is a bodyguard for the world's biggest musicians, Rihanna and loads of famous people. And not surprisingly, he's about 6'8".
No, definitely not.
Yeah.
DJ's dad, the big, huge Samoan guy, he's a bodyguard. Could you tell?
No way.
Because ultimately, if you're gonna tell somebody about that, you're gonna tell them during recording, obviously. Jeremy Miller is professionalism. That would work really well in broadcast. Imagine sports broadcasting on ESPN. Hi, honey. Yeah, I just got this really cool fact live on air. Fucking state of it, mate.
This is not extra.
Hey, Lord.
All right, so I pulled up stats. Both teams had 22 first downs in this game.
Mm-hmm.
Notre Dame ended up with 519 total yards. Clemson had 473.
You can tell Jeremy didn't watch it properly, can't you?
Fuck off.
Because he ain't talking about the big plays. He ain't talking about the big players. He ain't talking about the fact that so many people in this game came
I will say this. I will call this one out, okay? That pass interference that got thrown and then picked up because Dabo Sweeney wanted to do this and get into the referee's face, bullshit. That should have been a pass interference. He was
it was, but luckily it doesn't really matter at this point.
Right, it doesn't matter.
You don't have to worry about it now. Shut up, I'm talking. Ultimately, when it comes down to it, that pass interference luckily doesn't need to be a flashpoint now because there was a very good chance. You could see the outrage, of course. I was outraged. He's gone right through the back of the guy. Clearly pass interference. Dabo Sweeney interferes, essentially. He intimidates the referee, and he makes him pick up the flag. Luckily for us, it doesn't really matter. And I'm not going to sit here and slag off Dabo Sweeney because, you know, his methods are proof. And this is a team that has not lost a regular season game until now for 3 years. Okay? They are, you know, along with Alabama, the premier dynasty of college football right now. That's evident to see whether you've been watching for a week or for a fucking millennium. It's very obvious. Notre Dame, of course, very famous in themselves. Obviously, they knocked off. Last time the number one seed came to town was the Florida Gators many moons ago, and they knocked them off too. They've got a habit of doing that, of running aloft with the number one seeds and causing a lot of hassle. It's a very intimidating place to go. You think how hostile as well the crowd was. It was only about a third capacity of that. Big pitch invasion at the end. I'm sure all the fucking uber liberals are going to be upset about that. Where's my social distancing for all?
I was going to say, that's definitely more than a group of 10.
Absolutely. I have all of those people are in one single bubble called Guinness. They're all smashed off their titties right now, and they deserve to be. It was a killer game, honestly. I mean, like the first the first play is like a 65-yard touchdown run, like from Williams. It's like, bye.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Kyron Williams.
Jesus, I didn't even have a chance to sit down with my cup of tea, and he'd already scored. I was like, fuck's sake, at least let me boil the kettle first, mate.
Yeah, Kyron Williams went off tonight.
Yeah, he did. He was probably, a lot of people would argue, was probably the star. But I actually think a lot of people aren't going to talk enough about Ian Book and his ability to be clutch. Let's not forget, he didn't get sacked a single time, at least in regular time. I don't recall him getting sacked in overtime either, and if he did, it was probably a garbage possession. But his offensive line did really well. They gave him enough time. And even when they didn't give him enough time, he then proved he had the legs. He could roll out well. Didn't necessarily have the pace, but what's good about it, a high IQ quarterback, he was able to find. And it's a real shame because when he had that fumble right at the goal line and gave the ball back to Clemson, I thought, oh, Jesus Christ, that's going to be it for him. Any quarterback who's worth his salt could have been forgiven for losing their head a little bit after a big play like that. You've got yourself down into the red zone, you're 10 yards in, he's kind of evading the last tackle as the guy's hooked his leg and he fumbles the ball into the end zone, Clemson recovers, and you think, that right there, I was sitting there thinking, that's what I'm going to be speaking about most when it comes to this podcast. And ultimately, I'm not, because of the fact that Ian Book did something a lot of quarterbacks, especially at this young age, could not do and wouldn't be expected, and that is to be able to overcome that. You're against the number one seed. Whether people want to believe Clemson are outright the best team or not, doesn't matter. They're the number one seed. They're in your gaff. They're coming at you. They're smelling blood. They're fucking blitzing. It was ridiculous. Blitzed him. Every down almost.
If there's a college coach that's not a head coach that I respect as much as like Nick Saban and Dabo Swinney, it's Will Venables, the defensive coordinator for Clemson. This guy can take kids that are true freshmen and make them look like they're NFL prospects.
Yeah.
His defense is lights out. And his son is on this team, and he looked lights out. I would not be surprised.
Not lights out enough.
Yeah. I would not be surprised if Will Venables gets a head coaching job next year.
Wouldn't surprise me. Would not surprise me. He has done a wonderful job. That's clear to see. The pace of their rushing defense was phenomenal. However, that being said, they couldn't get the sack. They couldn't get him because he was just too good. He was too clutch. He was too high IQ. A lot of that as well is down to that incredible collection of tight ends that Notre Dame have. None more so than baby Gronk Meyer, who, he's got the same number as Gronk, the same body consistency. He even plays the same style. He's playing. That's what they call him. That's his nickname. Should be paying attention, boy. If you were watching the full game like I wasn't taking notes, you would know this.
If any of their tight ends are big, it's Tommy Tremble.
He might be big, but at the end of the day, it's Meyer who made the plays in this game. Tremble
did too.
Yeah, he made some plays, but let's be honest, mate. If you watch the game, you'll have noticed. I'm pretty sure anyone who watched it will tell you Meyer was the crucial tight end in this game. Some of the plays he made, collecting first downs on very tight third down calls. It just, and not only that, he was putting up an astonishing amount of blocking. Their running touchdown, for instance, in overtime was down to his blocking on the left side. He made lanes for his running game, and that's what I fucking love about him, because we forget, because of what Gronkowski has done, that actually blocking tight ends, and Kittle is probably the finest example of this in the NFL, blocking tight ends are still actually at a premium. Not every tight end knows how to throw a block and knows how to fucking create lanes for a running game. Kittle and Gronkowski are literally the most elite at it, but even Gronkowski doesn't create that many lanes. He's just a very good general blocker. I'd say Kittle is the only guy who really does it regularly. This Meyer guy, I think, has got a really bright future. I like the look of him. And what I liked about him as well was he was all sizzle and all steak as well. He didn't mind getting dirty. He didn't mind getting gritty. And that was what it came down to for me. It's just literally there's a hair between the two teams in this game. They could play each other 10 times. They'll probably tie most of them. Or, one will win 5, one will win the other 5. It is such a dynamic right down the middle between these two teams. But when it came down to it, Notre Dame were just ever so slightly more clutch when it mattered most. Hi, Jules. Yeah. Good game. Very good game.
Yeah.
So,
I also want to touch
fantastic book, fantastic. And to be fair, nobody's going to talk about the fact that Clemson's players are great. By the way, DJ Ula La 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 Le, he Lua Lua Trumano Lueza Lua Lua Lagos Nigeria, everything else in between, and Samoa to boot. He's fantastic. By the way, he looks like a real man. I've got to say, I know everyone's talking about Trevor Lawrence, right? Cut your fucking hair, mate. You look like a reject from Hanson. Unacceptable. Not having that. You look a state, honestly. He looks like Edge if he was 10 years old. Not having that. Not having that. He doesn't look like a proper man. Seriously. You belong in the Jets because, frankly, that haircut is great.
Yes.
Just an incredible game to watch. Anyone who knows anything about football, you don't have to be a huge college football fan. I watched this from start to finish. It was engrossing. It was electrifying in so many ways. And overtime, I think, was quite fitting for the battle of attrition.
Yes,
and it ends up with scenes in South Bend. Very, very impressive stuff.
There's actually a few things I want to talk about. The one is not only was Kyron Williams great at running, but some of the blocks that he placed to help Ian Book, fantastic.
Yeah, he used his height as well to his advantage. Instead of thinking, I'm small, shit, he thought, well, I'm small, so I need to get my base down low. And there was quite a few times where he cut guys off at the knees. They were coming in, the blitz, and he was like, and I guarantee they would have got 3 or 4 sacks if it hadn't been for the fact that he'd gone quite low and almost decapitated a few guys and stopped him, because there were a lot of times where these guys went flying into him and he just took the hit. He just, he took
He's a good, strong kid.
He is. He won't be able to get away with doing that every week in the NFL, though. Fuck me.
He's only a sophomore, so he's still got 2 years to learn.
Yes. Yeah. I like it. I think it's good, and in crucial games, it's very important. Don't want to see you doing it every game, though, because that's just asking for trouble long term when it comes to things like concussions and collisions and everything else. But this was a lovely, big physical game. At times, I didn't feel because I watched the Friday night games, and there was very much an evidence of these guys are smaller. These guys are younger. They haven't fully, evolved into the monstrous athletes they'll be in the NFL. Whereas in this game, there are a lot of times where I just thought, he probably play this Sunday, no problem. Stick him in as well. The pace, the power, the tight ends for Notre Dame, the running game that they had. It was a case of seeing just 2 teams full of elite things. There's only one criticism over this game, and I thought the officiating was fucking appalling at times. It was atrocious. Not just the pass interference call. They missed about 3 or 4 different face masks. Loads of holding penalties that just went awry. Then they could, sometimes at one point, I felt like Notre Dame was being scrutinised a bit too much because they were getting picked up on holding calls, and then Clemson were doing exactly the same hold. Nothing to be said. The pass interference call, but it picked flag up. There was actually a very similar offence to that earlier in the game that was called on Notre Dame, I think in the second quarter. And, they were very quick to be like, whoa, what do you think you're doing throwing the flag? On this one, they're like, I'm not upset, Dabo. Just pick that up, put it in my pocket. Sorry, Dabo. Sorry. Please don't hurt me.
Right.
He's not even a fucking intimidating prospect. Like, he swears a lot. I mean, if there was a swear jar for this game, then Dabo Swinney would probably end up opening his own charity by the end of this, because every time they cut to him on the touchline, it's like, you motherfucker, fucking shitbag, fuck. I was like, calm down.
Like when they had to check out the touchdown like 2 or 3 different times. First they said it stands. Then they overturned it. Then they checked it again and said it was still...
When he threw his headset. And he's just like, fuck you, I'm done. And it was just like, I understand it, but at the same... In that position, I didn't mind too much because I want you to fucking get it right. And they ultimately got it right. So I don't care in that respect. Like, the least of their offences was slowing down the game. For me, it was the amount of calls that were blatantly missed. And it's not like, we haven't got any videos or anything like the NFL. I mean, you've got exactly the same technology at your disposal.
Hell, I think they even have a couple other cameras that aren't in the NFL.
I'll tell you one thing I do appreciate, the overtime rules. I wasn't aware of the overtime rules. So the first overtime play, I'm like, what the fuck are you doing on the 25-yard line, you cheat? Get back, fucking get your ass back up the field. And so I thought, I'll have a quick look. Yeah, just kind of like almost like they're veering towards a penalty shootout style. They've definitely
Yeah.
incorporated something with the sport. The problem
the
was the referees made it so slow that it didn't actually become the gripping, fast-paced overtime you wanted. They were thinking, oh, well, if we just give them, first down, 25 yards, it'd be electric. It'll be like penalties. They'll be straight in the end zone, which is what Clemson did. Boom, just like that on their first possession. However, when it comes down to it, if the referees take 15 minutes to fucking review every play, all of a sudden fans are like, Jesus fucking Christ, get on with it. And that's what I was doing. I was like, oh, this is so good. I was like, 10 minutes. Oh my God, it's fucking 10 minutes. It's like, fucking, just fucking see it here, dickhead. You must have a TV screen. Get on with it. Referees were atrocious. Other than that, game was amazing.
Absolutely.
No one had a shit game for me. Fantastic. To be honest, if I'm Clemson, I'm sitting there thinking, God, blimey. I mean, by the way, Trevor Lawrence, right? COVID-19, am I correct?
Yeah, I know.
What the fuck is he
What
doing?
the fuck
Running
is he
around
doing
sticking
there?
his finger up
Exactly.
every fucking offensive lineman's bumhole then. He's like, oh, great game, lads, great game, great game. Don't slap me with your COVID hands. Get away from me,
And
Trevor.
he had a mask on, like, dude, if you have it, what the fuck are you doing here?
I don't understand, why, if he's got COVID, he shouldn't be there.
Exactly.
Or he should be in a plexiglass box.
Well, they said that he wasn't, having any symptoms, but he was positive for COVID. So even though he could be asymptomatic, that means he could, right. It means that he could still spread it. So what the fuck is he doing on a national broadcast? It makes no sense,
idea.
and I guarantee you.
Although by the end of the game, like with the scenes that we saw with the fans and that, probably people are going to forget about that quite quickly. And
I think the ACC are going to hit Clemson and Notre Dame big time.
I don't think they give a shit, to be honest. I really don't. I don't think they care.
The other two things
pocket change for a lot of them.
That's true. The other two things I want to talk about: DJ Uiagalelei, 29-44, 434 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
Clemson's good for the next 4 fucking years once Lawrence leaves because DJ is going to take this team and he's going to run with them. I would not be surprised if we see Clemson in the national championship or at least in the college football playoff for the next 4 years. Maybe 3, because if DJ's smart, he'll get out as a junior because he's got the talent.
Power as well.
A lot of power fuck too. Yeah. The other thing.
A lot of quarterbacks I saw this weekend that were quite good talents, but quite lightweight. And this lad was a big unit, man. That classic Samoan DNA. By the way, can we not put Trevor Lawrence in one of them boxes like Michael Cole had in the commentary position?
Oh, that would have been fucking great.
That would be amazing. Just him slapping on a plexiglass. Let me out, guys. Shut up. Until you can sing Mbop properly, you're not allowed outside of your box. Shut your mouth.
The other thing I want to talk about is the fact that Notre Dame held the ACC and the NCAA single season, rushing king, Trevor Etienne, from 18 carries for 28 yards. 28 yards. That's insane. That's Notre Dame's solid defense in a nutshell.
They have the best pass rush in college football. That's something I've been hearing a lot of noise about. Guys who, I watch the college game day stuff, the build up to it, they were talking about if there's one thing Notre Dame have to use and use to their advantage is their pass rush.
Did they get it? Especially in that second overtime.
He's probably the one player, actually, I wasn't massively impressed with was what's his name, Etienne or however you pronounce it. In France it's Etienne, thank you very much. But ultimately I wasn't huge. I didn't think he had a bad game by any means. He just didn't have a very effective game. Somebody's got to have an ineffective game like this, but when you look at it, I mean, the point spread doesn't technically count, does it, after full time? They don't.
I'm not sure.
In betting they cease betting at the final whistle, so anything in overtime doesn't count towards the point spread.
Over-under, it does count for the over-under.
It doesn't over here, not in English betting.
Really? That's messed up.
So, which is really frustrating, particularly if you're betting on knockout games with extra time and overtime. For instance, if you put a bet on, I don't know, Lewandowski to score in the game and he only scores in extra time, doesn't count, only counts up to 90 minutes. Null and void.
Wow.
Yeah, they're very strict about that. It's a good way of making extra money, the cheeky cunts as well.
Right. Cornell Powell for Clemson. 6 receptions, 161 yards, and a touchdown.
161 yards from 6 receptions.
Yeah.
It's just like he was playing Madden. He's taking a piss.
And the thing is,
bits.
this is his first chance after getting, passed up for T. Higgins and the bigger.
None for you, Higgins.
Right. These guys were their first round draft picks, and now it's his chance, and he's balling out. He is balling out, and he is a senior, so he'll be gone next year.
Yeah. Yeah, there were so many flashpoints in this game, and every time there was one, I wrote it down, because I thought, oh, that might be the most important talking point. But this game just wouldn't let up. It just would not let up. And eventually, I had so many flashpoints down here, written down, player lays out, great tight end play by Meyer, for instance. There was a fumble in the end zone. I thought that was going to be it. Just so many different things. Olagalele gets it to Amari Rogers was somebody who really stood out to me in this game.
Yes.
I thought he was a monster.
That's another
there was a point when they were third down, quite deep into the fourth quarter. Third down, passes it off to him. He's still got about 5 or 6 yards to make up to get a first down. And he makes one of the players miss before cutting inside and making the first down. You think, if you don't make that, Notre Dame's got the ball, got a good opportunity to almost ice the game at that point because it was just so tight. And throughout it, people were saying, especially on social media, Notre Dame keep getting in the end zone, but only getting field goals. They're not getting enough touchdowns. The funny thing is, if both teams converted with the lethality that they're expected to do in the red zone, this would have been 87 points apiece. Because the amount of times they opted for a field goal over a touchdown actually was quite extreme, especially on Notre Dame's standpoint. And I honestly sat there and thought, this is what's going to keep Clemson going. This is what's going to bring Clemson through at the end. I sat there and I just thought, Clemson are going to pinch it because they're going to have just slightly more red zone efficiency when it comes down to it. And ultimately, Notre Dame actually became clutch. And a lot of that is down to the fact that Book, his mentality, his never say die attitude right at the end, particularly in overtime, was spectacular. All of a sudden, where other guys were cramping up and picking injuries, he started running out of pocket more. He found more pace, more second wind, more effort, more energy. He's going to be a really good kid to look at. If he can maintain that kind of product and advance on his body and his level of pace, his skill, his athleticism, he comes into the NFL, all of a sudden you're thinking, here's a guy, because he can actually throw the ball. It's not just a running spectacular. He's, predominantly a throwing guy. So I really like Book. He was probably my star for this game.
I'll go out on a limb and say Ian Book's a senior, so of course he's going to be going in the draft. There are a lot of teams looking for a quarterback.
He could end up getting picked up by a very good franchise as well.
I think he's going to get. I think he'll get picked up by the Patriots.
Wouldn't surprise me. They're very good at dealing in the draft, getting themselves higher up, and obviously they're going to have a high pick anyway this year because they're pretty dreadful. But that being said, if Trevor Lawrence declares, which he's probably going to, I've also found it very amusing that whenever he was shown on the big screen, all the Notre Dame fans were going, JETSSS, like just trolling the poor little, and he's like, shut up! It's just really funny.
Because
really
he does not want to be a Jet. He already said
Book's the kind of guy I reckon will be overlooked slightly, and he'll end up going lower in the first round, if in the first round at all. Because I know what NFL teams are like, and there's going to be a lot of teams looking for offensive line pieces and things of that nature. A premium franchise running back and stuff like that. A lot of teams need offensive pieces more than they do quarterbacks, because there's a lot of good quarterbacks flying around in free agency.
And there'll be a lot of wideouts in this draft as well.
So. Good game, though. Good game, lads.
Fantastic game. And
one of the all-time greats. I picked a hell of a weekend to start watching properly.
Yes, that was a great game.